Welcome everyone to our MPF webinar for the month of October. This is our 39th, Uri, can you believe it?
Seems like the 80th, but yes.
I was gonna say, we started these in 1908. We've been doing these for a good while and have a really nice pattern going. We've got some great guest speakers as always. So welcome to Debbie Foster, Affinity Consulting. So glad to have you with us.
Be here.
And Stephanie Everett as well, Affinity Consulting and the Lawyerist CEO. We're going to ask her what that is, Lawyerist, and she's CEO of that operation. So Stephanie, welcome to you as well.
Thanks, John. Great to be here.
Well, we're delighted to have you, and people who've been before know that at the top of the hour, we'll start our formal program and have some announcements and turn right to our topic at hand. But we're just chit-chatting among ourselves as folks join the call. Debbie, where are you today?
I am in Chicago today.
Is it
Downtown
windy?
Chicago. It is not very windy. It's a beautiful day in Chicago.
Love Chicago, and we'll talk about a program we're going to be presenting there in a couple of weeks, and hopefully the weather will hold out and we'll see some 70-degree days in early October. Stephanie, where sit you this afternoon?
I'm coming from my home office in Atlanta, Georgia. It's also beautiful here. And after this, I head to the airport to go to Virginia to meet with a client tomorrow. So
very good. I live in Atlanta, as you know, and I spend a lot of time shuttling through that airport. So hopefully you've got a secret path through ATL.
I don't know, but I have every membership possible, so I can judge all the lines and pick my fate.
Hey, and Delta is clamping down on its MQM Sky Miles program. That's got everybody all worked up. So, we'll see how that all goes. So it's 1:57. I'm getting a little background here. Somebody. We are recorded, so as a follow-up to today's program, we're going to send you an email with a link to the recording. We're going to have some nice handouts we'll be distributing. It'll feature the polling technology we gather and some other resources we'll follow up with. And we've just developed an alliance with Nine Sale, and they specialize in law firm CEO and online reputation and such, and they're working with us to write up recaps of these programs, and we're starting to blog a bit, in tandem with these webinars. So we want to thank our friends at Nine Sale for their support, their participation, and the follow-up we'll be sending you. We have 55 people registered today, and we hit about 70% conversion rates. So crowd is shuffling in, and it's 1:58, so we'll start things shortly. So Debbie, what's the big takeaway for today's program?
Ooh, up front.
Yeah.
Wow, you're just going right in for it. I mean,
Sure.
What do I think the big takeaway is going to be? Because it could turn out to be something completely different depending on how the conversation goes. I think the big takeaway is that innovation needs to happen every day. We need to be thinking innovatively every day about the simple things and the big things, and we need to be okay with small wins because those are the things that really add up and have a big impact.
Yeah. Don't be afraid. Lawyers, we read Larry Richards' research on the lawyer personality and the risk aversion and change resistance. And, hey, it's all around us. And, Stephanie, what's your takeaway for our crowd, just to prime the pump before we officially begin?
Yeah, I think I was going to go similar to Debbie. I think the word makes us think it has to be these big sweeping changes. And so then we set ourselves up to not even take a step, because it's like, I have to come up with something completely bespoke that doesn't exist. That seems too hard. Why do it? And the reality is there's lots of small steps along the way. And maybe also some of the new tools that are out there are worth playing with. So if you haven't, if you're nervous or worried, like maybe we can also get you a little bit more comfortable and take a chance.
We at one of our managing partner programs not long ago, the word daunting comes up to installing a new time and billing software, or daunting. And you're right, break it down. How do you eat the elephant? One bite at a time. So let's get started. It is 2 o'clock, right at the top of the hour. So welcome everyone to the MPF webinar series. We're tackling building innovation into your law firm's culture. We have experts on law firm innovation we'll introduce shortly, Debbie and Stephanie. But Uri and I want to just roll through a few housekeeping announcements, and then we'll jump into our topics. So Uri, good to see you, my friend. How's it going?
Good to see you too, John. How are you doing?
We are hanging in there in the beautiful ATL. Looking forward to a break in the weather. And fall's a busy time of year, a lot of conferences and retreats and such. So we're staying busy, and always love doing these webinars. So good to see you. And Uri sells risk management services to law firms and runs some managing partner groups up in New York and New Jersey. And we've been collaborating for 10 years now. Today's program, or upcoming programs, managing partner, things we're doing are the webinar series. We're doing the third Wednesday of the month, locked into that. And so October, November, topics will be forthcoming. Debbie, want to ask you about our fall symposium in a few minutes that we're doing in a couple of weeks, because that's going to be really exciting. We do our newsletter every week, and our web is out there, our website. So we try to collect some nice articles, resources for law firm leaders. Debbie, talk to us about this program we got going on in Chicago.
Yeah, very excited. Wednesday, October 4th and Thursday, October 5th. Elise Holtzman from the Lawyer's Edge and I are co-chairing this event that's being put on by the Managing Partner Forum, John's group. And we have an amazing day, a slate of women, powerful women speakers that we're really excited about. We're going to have a panel discussion on challenges and triumphs of women in law firm leadership. We're going to do a workshop, which I'm super excited about, the double-edged sword of perfectionism. We're going to have another panel about mentoring and sponsorship. And we're going to wrap up with these short impact sessions around women empowering women, tackling difficult conversations, and building resilience. We're going to wrap it up with a networking reception, and it's going to be right in the heart of downtown Chicago. And anyone who is interested in a full day program with some really amazing dynamic presenters, but also a great audience of women who are leaders in law firms, up and coming leaders in law firms and corporate legal departments. We would love to have you join us.
Yeah, check it out if you haven't already seen it. We blend, we have in-house counsel, we have managing partners, we have some of the top women consultants in the business. And I credit Elise and Debbie for building a great program and faculty. So check us out. And as part of the offering following up to today, we'll present a discount. We have a few seats left. It's a relatively small and intimate conference, about 50 people, but we do have a few seats left. We'd love to fill them and make an offering to today's audience. So look for that in your follow-up. Today's program, 55 registered. We got the survey results. When you registered, we asked you some questions. Through the program, we'll ask you some questions. So vote early, vote often. As we like to say, we're recorded. All this will be sent to you after the event, and then we want your feedback. So after today's program, you'll get directed to a very brief survey. Tell us what you like, tell us what you didn't like, and topics for the future. We really do pay attention to that as we develop future programming. Want to thank our friends at Nine Sale who are doing the recaps, and we'll hear more from them in the coming days, months, and weeks. They're really good at what they do. Today's guest, Debbie, CEO, Affinity Consulting. She's in Florida, my home state. And Stephanie Everett, she's here in Atlanta, and lawyer is CEO. So Debbie, just tell us a little bit about what you do and what Affinity Consulting does, and then we'll jump in. And Stephanie, same to you after Debbie says
Sure.
hello.
So Affinity Consulting, we've been around for 25 years. It's our 25th year. And we help law firms and legal departments with technology and strategy projects, everything from implementing new software to thinking differently about technology and how they use it and profitability. And all of the things that come in between there, helping lawyers decide and make decisions around how they're going to build the next generation of their firm, what we hope will be an even healthier firm than what they have right now.
And Debbie, we've known each other forever and a day, and in recent years have been collaborating a bit more. Your organization, how many professionals are working with you guys these days?
We have about 90 people all over the country. We're remote first, and we did that long before COVID forced people to do that. So we've been a remote first workplace for probably 10 years. And we have former practicing lawyers, former firm administrators, former paralegals. A lot of the professionals at our company have worked in a law firm prior, so they bring that real life experience. But we also just have a group of people who love to help lawyers think differently about how they get their work done.
Cool. Thank you. Stephanie, tell us a little bit about what you do and the Lawyerist CEO and those sorts of things, to say hello.
Yeah, sure. Hi, everybody. So at Lawyerist, we help and guide lawyers to build healthier law firms. So we actually have a coaching program that's focused primarily on the smaller law firms, is who we've traditionally worked with. And so we help them on all aspects of their firm, from understanding how to build healthy profits, healthy teams, healthy clients, healthy systems, and technology. And it shouldn't come as any surprise why we decided to join the Affinity family in January. So now I'm proud to call Debbie not just a friend, but my business partner. And so now combined, both teams work together, and really, I think we can safely say no matter what size or stage your business is in, we have the team that can help you.
Debbie, you said smaller firms. How do you define small firms?
Oh, I said it, maybe.
I'm sorry, Stephanie. I'm sorry, I meant Stephanie.
That's okay. I just looked at it. So there's no great universal definition, but we've historically said 15 lawyers or less is sort of who we've targeted in our program, just because at that size, it just works how many decision makers are in the room and the way our program works. I think on the Affinity side of the house, we're working with that size all the way up to your AmLaw, 100 firms. Is that fair?
Gotcha.
Did I get that right?
We're in mid-law, and I get the question, hey, John, what's mid-law? And I don't know, 10 to 100, 10 to 100, 25 to 200. You go to some of these conferences and they say, I'm from a small law firm. We only have 3 lawyers and 4 offices. And it's like, oh, that's pretty good size enterprise. But yeah, thank you very much, ladies. And let's do our first polling question. And Uri, you're going to do the setup, and I'm going to count the votes, because that's what we do in Georgia.
We always ask this question for the benefit of our panelists and for our discussion today. So John will launch the poll. How many lawyers are with your firm? Less than 10, 10 to 25, 26 to 50, 50 100, or more than 100 lawyers? John, do your magic. Count those votes.
Well, we're doing a recount here. We're doing a recount. But about 70% of you had weighed in. And for the benefit of our panel, here are our firm sizes today. So we got a good smattering from smaller firms on up to 20% from 100 or more lawyer firms. So off we go. Debbie, talk to us. What's innovation?
All right. I'd love to start off by talking about the definition of innovation, because sometimes that word is scary and it sounds kind of generic. And isn't everything we do innovation? The answer to that is no, everything you do isn't innovation. But I love this definition: to make changes in something established, especially by introducing new methods, ideas, or products. And the especially by introducing new methods, ideas, or products, I think is the part that I like to emphasize, because sometimes it isn't just what are we doing now and how can we make a small tweak to it. It's thinking about, what if we were starting a new law firm today? Would we, how would we take ourselves completely out of the way that we think about getting our work done now and decide that we have to do it completely differently? And I think that that can be, and we're going to talk about this more later, that can be a real challenge, that sometimes the things that we look at and say that is innovative might be Stone Ages kind of thing for another firm that has already traveled down that road of innovation. And so I think the important takeaway for, before we even get into the conversation here, is that innovation is not going to mean the same thing, even though there is a definition for it, but it isn't going to practically translate to the same thing for any two firms.
Stephanie?
Yeah, I agree. And I think it's about asking questions, like Debbie said. So if, it starts with asking questions, and sometimes you're never quite sure where that's going to take you.
Uri, you're working with a lot of firms in the law firm epicenter of the United States, certainly, New York. Comments on the innovation as we kick off our conversation this afternoon?
Yeah, I think we're going to get into it with this great panel, John, but I think it's what drives the innovation. Unfortunately, so many of the clients I see, something has happened and it's almost always negative. It's almost always, it is never, we got this great opportunity, let's innovate. It's always, we lost the big client. We lost the rainmaker. We need to innovate. People are leaving. We're too slow. The negative feedback. So I'm looking forward to hearing from the panelists. How do we get ahead of this? How do we make this part of our culture? Who makes it part of their culture? How can we do that? Because that's where the firms get better and not just react
Yeah.
to what's
I think
kicking them
often the clients are driving
Client,
innovation.
right.
Clients are driving this show as to how we're going to bill and track time and
Yeah.
share documents and things like that. So we'll get into where innovation's coming from within law firms. Had to throw in the old
John,
Rogers adoption curve. Debbie, yeah?
Yeah, one other quick thing. I think a lot of times innovation is very directly connected in people's minds to technology.
Yes.
And I think that's another piece of this, is that we can be innovative with how we hire. We can be innovative with how we onboard people. We can be innovative with how we communicate with our clients. We can be innovative in our technology. We can be innovative in every area, in process reimagination. And it doesn't have to have anything to do with technology. I'm going to tell you all a story later that has absolutely nothing to do with technology, right? But
the one we shared before we went live.
Yeah. Innovation is not, like, it is not limited to technology. And unfortunately, sometimes innovation lands in the lap of IT, and there's so many things that law firms desperately need to innovate on that don't have anything to do with the people on the IT team.
Yeah. Interesting. We've seen this curve, business school, New York. You don't want to be in the bleeding edge, but you don't want to be too far behind either, because you get blown away. And I think a nice, comfortable, early majority position, might be a place for law firms to strive to be. Not out on the cutting edge. That can be a little messy. But get in on the front end of things. Don't wait. Don't be the last one to toss your fax machine. Another way of looking at that innovation curve. And when you all registered, we asked, where would you place your law firm on this innovation curve, generally speaking, when it comes to accepting new ideas? And here's what y'all said at point of registration. Stephanie, I invite your comment to this set of data.
I think it's interesting, and I really reacted to Yuri's comment about a negative thing driving innovation, because I work with the smaller firms. So I saw from that first poll, the folks with those 25 or less lawyers, I think that that's the opposite. So they're not, or maybe, but they're out there thinking because they're smaller, they're like the little speedboats, right? So they have the opportunity to go just try stuff. And they're not always reacting to something negative, but instead they're like, that looks cool, I want to go do it. And some of them also have come from big law world where maybe it was a little slower, maybe it did feel a little bit more like the big crew, the big ship. And so they saw the jump as an opportunity to really be creative in how they're thinking about things. So it'd be interesting to see. I don't know that we have this, but like of the people who said innovators and early adopters, where they also fall in that law firm size mix, to see if my theory plays out. I'm not sure.
We can't slice the data
No,
finally, but I think smaller firms can be a little more nimble and fewer decision makers involved, perhaps younger leadership, willing to look forward and do things a different way. Debbie, do you think 6% of the firms on today's call are truly innovators, or what do you think of this data?
So I think that anyone who is genuinely trying to make things better should wear a hat that says, I'm an innovator. Like that's it doesn't have to be mind-blowing innovation to be counted. So I think that this is fair. And I think something else that Stephanie said, and John, you and I do a lot of strategic work with firms, and there are times when and I'm sure this is true for you, we didn't even talk about this ahead of time, where we are sitting in a room full of decision makers and we know exactly what their next 3 steps should be. And all we do is talk about why they can't make any of the 3 steps, right? Like,
yeah,
that does not happen. I think Stephanie's point about the smaller firms, it's not that it never happens, because of course it happens sometimes, but it's different. And I think that the sense of survival, like the sense of needing to survive in a smaller firm, it feels different than what you see in a mid-sized firm or a larger firm, which is that inertia will just keep them alive. And they're scrappier. And so I think I would also be interested in the slicing and dicing, but I also think that it's pretty interesting here that 13% of the registrants answered that they're laggards, because I think it's also perception. If you've worked somewhere for 25 years and that is all like compared to what, right? There's really like a compared to what question that goes along with this. So I think those are interesting results.
Very general question, and I think in certain parts of the country, we see more innovation in Boston, Washington. You don't see it in Birmingham, Alabama as much, and so there's smaller firms, different IP groups might be more innovative than traditional insurance defense groups, and so I'm a big believer in pilot programs within the firm to get things rolling, and let's try it out within this office, this practice group, and then bring the skeptics along. We know Larry Richards' research on the lawyer personality. We asked as well when you registered if innovation, again, a very general question, innovation in quotes, is among your firm's core values. And first, do you even have core values? But then is innovation among them? 32% of you, 1 in 3, said yes. But a good many of you said, mm-mm. Surprised, Debbie Foster?
I'm not surprised. I'm surprised that 1 in 5 said, I'm not sure. That is surprising to me. I'm not surprised. I think that we are, innovation is a bit of a buzzword. We will all admit that. People use the word innovation to describe things. And I think even in the registration, you asked, do you have any questions? And someone said, how do you even define innovation? So sometimes that can be a challenge, but innovation being part of a firm's core values, there could be people who said no, because it's almost like the pay to play. Of course we're in it. Like, we wouldn't be here if we weren't. So I think there's a couple of surprising things here, and maybe there's even a question like thinking about should we, it's almost like, should showing up on time for work be in your core values? No, because you just should show up on time for work. So should innovation be in your core values? I don't know. Maybe you just should innovate because that's what we all need to do to survive.
You know, Debbie, I'm sure you run into this situation. I see it frequently. Once great law firms dominant in their smaller market take it all for granted. They become complacent, you know, kind of fat and happy. We'll always represent the banks or the hospital system or the whatever. And you know, it'll always be this way. It's been this way for 80 years. And then you see it happening. And, you know, the talent gets plucked off by big law. You know, we got the regional firms showing up and having their impacts, disruption, you know. And yet, you know, it's always going to be this way. I'm sure you run into that from time to time.
All the time.
Yeah.
All the time.
And so often they bring you in when it's a little late. You know? Or you mentioned it. We're in kind of reactive panic mode, and that's the catalyst to, you know, wake up and do something. It shouldn't come to that, you know, as some crisis to get you thinking about this all the time. Within your firm. Debbie, I'm kind of kicking it over to you and Stephanie. We got a couple of slides running, and kind of walk us through what you wanted to impart to everybody.
Yeah, I'll start out with just like 2 or 3 and then turn it over to Stephanie and let her give her thoughts here, because I do think that identifying the obstacles to innovation and to, even if we don't use the word innovation, to thinking differently about how you do things at your firm, whether it is work or it is hiring or it is managing culture or people or whatever it is, there are a lot of obstacles. And I think that one of the biggest challenges that, especially in the mid-size market, the mid-size and larger market, one of the biggest challenges to really thinking differently about how work gets done is how lawyers get paid. Like it is just, I mean, this is not a webinar about compensation, but
the billable
if I had a
hour.
soapbox and I was gonna stand on it for a few minutes, that lawyers are disincentivized to be innovative and to think differently about how their work gets done. Like it's a fundamental challenge, and we're not going to solve that on this call. So I will move past that. The other thing is, you know, we've been talking about lawyer succession planning for a really long time. I feel like, John, you've been talking about it a lot. Like there's, you know, we're just always talking about it. But the thing that people aren't talking about, and you might have actually recently done a webinar on this because I just saw something about this, but I've been talking about this for probably 5 years. The lawyer succession, we have to figure that out. But the staffing succession planning is a gigantic issue. And those obstacles, like I'm only going to work here for 3 more years. Why should I be, what would motivate me to think differently about how work gets done? And those are the people that are training the new staff that comes on board.
Yeah.
The issue around comp and succession beyond lawyers are 2 of the very big obstacles in my mind to innovation. And I'll kick it to Stephanie to give some thoughts about other obstacles.
Stephanie?
Because you know how much I agree with that. I'm on a mission to kill the billable hour. I'm going to go a whole different direction just to give maybe a different thought here. I think time is one of our biggest obstacles. And, you know, I made a little note that to really innovate, we need leaders who will sit and stare out the window or go for a walk or sit and watch the sunset or, you know, fill in the blank of something. I don't know about you guys, but some of my biggest aha moments that I've had as a business leader did not come sitting at this desk. They came when I was out and giving my brain space and time to think. Maybe I'm on a walk and I've listened to a podcast and then an idea comes into my head that had nothing to do with the podcast, but it was like, oh, that's what needed to unlock for me. And a lot of lawyers that we work with, they're so, you know, if I almost want to throw up when I hear the word overwhelm, but I know it's what everyone's just feeling, so much so, but it's just like there's so much on us. We're wearing so many hats for a lot of our law firm leaders, you're still expected to maintain a practice and maybe wear a leader role, which is 2 jobs in one, right? And sometimes you have 3 or 4, depending on the size of the firm, you may have multiple jobs that you're doing. And so then when you say, okay, and now I want you to go sit and put your feet up and stare out the window, or go take a walk in the middle of the day, like, you're going to look at me like, what? Are you insane? I do not have time to do this.
I can't bill a client for that, you know.
And
So
yet,
hardwired to that billable hour, you know. And we were doing some programming around Chat GPT and the implications that has on your billable hours and feed your associates work to draft and review and such. And it's funny, on opposite sides of the table, one lawyer is saying this is the death of mid-law. Artificial intelligence, it's going to kill us. We can't afford to compete with the big firms and their big technology budgets. And the guy across the table says, au contraire. This is the playing field leveler. If we just lean into it and learn how to apply it to our practice, instead of being so afraid of it, because of that one, case up involving Steve Schwartz that they all like to talk about. That, going to bury our head in the sand and too risky, not going to do it. Let me push our slides along here, Debbie, because I know we have a lot to cover in our remaining time and have quite a few more polling questions we want to put out to everybody.
So on this, I'm just going to tell you two quick stories. Not 4 or 5 years ago, a lawyer came to us. She was leaving her big firm, and she said, "I'm going to send you a list of everything I think that I need for my new firm." And she sent over the list, and one of the things on her list was a typewriter. And it was a bulleted list, and it had a paragraph
explanation. What year is this, Debbie Foster? What year are we in here?
This is 4 or 5 years ago.
Wow, a typewriter.
And her paragraph under that said, "I know I still use paper files. I know you're probably laughing at me right now, but on my paper files, there's a tab at the top, and I stick a label on that tab, and on the label, I put the client's name and the matter name." And then she said, "I can't imagine any other way that that's going to get on the label except for a typewriter. So I think I need a typewriter, but if you have another answer, because I'm not getting away from using paper files, I need a typewriter." And I read that, I went to Amazon, I ordered her a Dymo label printer, and I had it shipped to her office. And she thought that manna had rained down from heaven, because the point is, she couldn't imagine that there was another way. And I think that when we sit around tables and we talk about like working smarter, we have a lot of people at our table that do not have the ability to think like that.
Right.
And this is a very smart lawyer who is running a wildly successful practice right now after she left that firm. But she thought she needed to start it with a typewriter. And you think that that's like old, and that was from 5 years ago. Well, yesterday, I'm at a firm, and I am sitting watching someone get their work done. And we're doing this billing accounting department review. And I watched someone print a check and then fold a check and then stick it into a window envelope, and then open up a Word document with a 10x3 Avery label, click on the label, retype the address that the check needs to go to, because the window envelope doesn't line up correctly to the check, and then she sticks the label on top of the window envelope so she can mail it. And at first I was just horrified, because here's the thing, I can help you fix that check lineup so it's not doing that. But then I took it out of the thing and I just folded the bottom of the check and I slid it back in. And she looked at me and she said, "Oh my gosh, I could just fold the bottom of the check and put it in the envelope." We are, it's not fair of anyone to ask any other person at a law firm to imagine what life would be like, because not everyone can do it. Now, we can challenge people and we can encourage people and we can give people examples, and we can kind of work together to kind of think about, like, what if I watched you do your job, because you're going to see it really differently than I would see it, and vice versa. What if we spend some time watching each other? And on the next slide, John, I'll just say that this is one of the things where the place where I start with people is look for friction. If you want to find some low-hanging fruit, just go ask someone, What's something that takes you time that you think, man, if I had that time back? You know, what's something that you feel like is manual? Tell me the last time you opened up a spreadsheet. What were you tracking in that spreadsheet? Like, you can think of a lot of examples where you can just, you don't have to think about something that is this big. Just one person have like Innovation Fridays where everybody comes and brings one idea, something that is harder than it needs to be, and you do some brainstorming. It can be so simple as just saying, what's harder than it should be, and starting there.
I remember when I was a baby consultant and John, you need a website. And I said, what? You need an email address. And we all had AOL email addresses. And it's like that wasn't that long ago. And we all have these now and can't imagine life without them. It's amazing how things have come along, and we do think of it as technology. Uri, I want to jump you. You've been kind of on the sideline, and then we have some polling questions
Yep.
that I think are really interesting. I want to make sure we get to. So, any contribution from you at this juncture?
Yeah, 2 points. Number one, I think Debbie has both going on what Debbie said, which is number one, finding the friction. I had a managing partner literally yesterday tell me, and it wasn't a tech solution, it was the opposite of a tech solution, where he said a few years ago, now he manages a 55 attorney firm. He said a few years ago, I realized and I released my calendar to my assistant. He said it saves me 30 minutes a day. The whole year, 30 minutes a day. He said, life changer. That's number one. Number one. Number two, I think Debbie's point about it's hard to sit there and stare at the windows and come up with great ideas. And Stephanie hit this point too. Another managing partner I know has standing innovation time on their week. Now it happens to be in the IT space, excuse me. It doesn't have to be, but his time is he has like office hours with IT. There's no agenda. It's come spend time with our IT people, learn how to do your job better. Standing appointment every week. I think it's Monday 2 to 3. It's brilliant. He says, I tell my people, get 1% better every week. Guess what that adds up to? It's amazing. So schedule it.
Compartmentalize it. And I, you know, for me, it was running, you know, when I was younger and I had decent knees and boy, just, oh my God, what a great idea. That wouldn't have happened, you know, with my nose to the grindstone back in the office. So yeah, finding that place, be it in the shower or on your drive-in in the morning, you know, and think about what could be. And it doesn't have to be that big a stretch. I think, Debbie, you provided a great example of just folding the envelope in a slightly different place, you know. We're abandoning our postage meter next month. You know, I've had this postage meter, $50 a month. For what? You know, I don't send much mail anymore, so we're giving up the postage meter. And you know, I'm kind of freaking out over the postage meter, but it's going. Let me throw some polling questions here. And Debbie, you provided these when we were setting up our planning. And let me go over. I have to switch to a different place and present the discussion. Set up our question, Debbie, and I'll launch our poll.
So I'm just wondering, how often are these kinds of topics about working smarter, thinking differently about how you get work done, however you might define innovation, how often are your leaders talking about this?
And we put weekly, monthly, quarterly, annually, or never, or rarely. Stephanie, prediction, what do you think? You think this is a regular topic within firms at shareholder meetings and such?
I bet we hit maybe annually, maybe quarterly. Let's see. I'm curious.
Yeah. Debbie, what do you think?
I think we're going to see annually and quarterly.
We're going to see our number one answer is hardly ever. 43%, hardly ever. Put that on the agenda, folks. You got monthly meetings, quarterly meetings, firm retreats. Let's talk about it and what we can do to be a more efficient, profitable, cohesive law firms. Try new things. Our next polling question, Debbie, set us up and I'll launch this poll.
Okay, here we go. Okay. Do we have a budget designated for innovation projects? You know, sometimes not everything costs money, as we've talked about. There are some things that don't cost money. But if you aren't setting aside money and you aren't designating money for what you are willing to spend from an innovation perspective, when the cost of innovation, when there is a cost to innovation and it comes up, it seems like an obstacle. So I think there's some real value in thinking about setting money aside and designating money towards projects like this. And I'm wondering if anyone does that.
Interesting. And would we give it like to the IT department or the marketing department? Is that kind of what you're thinking here, and let them play around with some innovative stuff? Or is it happening within our areas of law, our litigation group, our tax group, our corporate group? Where do you think we have these budget items?
Yes. The answer is yes, all of the above.
Yes, and yes, huh? What do you think? You think firms got this money set aside somewhere in their budgets? Debbie?
No, because I think that the way firms budget, they're like, do we need a new, insert something here, document management system next year, and should we budget for it? The thought of budgeting for incremental improvements that might cost money, I think is hard for people to wrap their heads around, but I'd love to be wrong about that.
Uri, your prediction, and Stephanie, yours, and I'll close the votes, and we'll reveal our results.
I think this is going to be a big no.
Hard no, huh?
Yeah.
Stephanie?
I bet it's no, unless people change to considering, because they're already this far into the program. They're like, well, that, oh no, okay, no one took my bait on that one.
Oh.
That's what we have. We're going to have a few more kind of discussion points, Debbie and Stephanie, and then we'll throw in a few more polling questions too. Talk to us about this matrix.
So a couple of years ago, I read a very, very old Harvard Business Review article about a matrix similar.
John, move the slides. John, move the slide.
Hang on, I heard you the first time, Marie.
There we go.
Jesus Christ. Start screaming at
me. We took this matrix and adapted it a bit for how a law firm could be thinking about innovation. And so the purpose of this is to start thinking about what you do right now. That's the green circle in the lower left-hand corner. And the suggestions are that 70% of what you're doing should be focused on your core, right? So we don't need to say like, we are a personal injury firm and we think we'll add some estate planning or, you know, something that's just kind of a little like out in left field. And thinking about when you're thinking about how you might grow, what your growth strategy might look like. You have who is the client and how to serve the clients on the different axis, on the left, on the vertical and the horizontal axis. So your core stuff is all about things that you can use your existing people for and existing practice areas and existing clients. And your next step, thinking about how do we dedicate resources and time if we're looking for that growth strategy and what else can we do, diversification, is what would it look like if we spent 20% of our time in the adjacent area, more of a reach, but it's new clients in a new market. And then the final area in this matrix is transformational, something that is completely outside of your comfort zone, where you should maybe be spending 10% of your time. This is where we like to talk about things like experiments. You know, Stephanie does a lot of work with firms on pricing experiments, and I think that might be a good just maybe point to make here when you're thinking about innovation and experiments around something like pricing.
Stephanie,
I don't know if you want to add something there to.
Yeah, I mean, a lot, you know, don't tell me it can't be done, because I have law firms that are doing flat fees for contested litigation. Does that mean they're setting a price on day one and that's the price forever and ever more for the rest of that case? Absolutely not. But there's ways to do everything. So And the pricing discussion is so important. So I'm glad you brought it up, because it allows us to take advantage of these things. Suddenly, if we're pricing differently, when we find a more efficient way to do our work, we really start to see that profit growth and we get the benefits from it. So, they kind of go hand in hand. If you're just billing by the hour, you don't really get to see, get to see that upside as a business owner.
Have you ever been to any Covey programs? They're good at helping you compartmentalize and focusing what's important, but not urgent. We get caught up in that moment of urgency, that billable hour, and don't find the time for the important things that can be put off till next week or tomorrow. Our strategic planning, our succession, we can work that in next year. And I don't think it's ever too early to think about planning and succession. And so often we wait till we're in crisis, we react, and finding that important time to focus on the innovation, the change, the future of law. We alluded to it earlier, the C-suite, and we did a webinar on this topic a few months ago, empowering your C-suite. And hiring really good, typically non-lawyers, often non-lawyers, to run the business side, the COO, the CIO, the CMO, and so many smaller firms. We can't afford these people. And it's amazing when you start thinking about hiring a director of practice development to work on associate retention, feedback, whatever, how impactful that can be. So bring on examples. I'm sure you see it, ladies. Hey, who else is doing that? And so we have really collected a lot of data as to how firms are evolving, adapting, to present to your skeptical shareholders that, hey, it's okay to do things differently. And other firms, you find those examples, they want to see the precedent so often. Here's another when you're registered polling result. I like this one. And Uri, we're going to invite people to drill down a little bit, which is within which management group within your firm are you seeing the most innovation? And IT, not surprisingly, but other. And Uri, tell people how to type other into the chat box so we can get a sense of what other where innovation might be sourced within firms.
Yeah, when we were looking through this data, we were curious. About a quarter of you said other areas are more innovative in your firm. So there's no chat box, but the question and answer tab. And, I'll be watching that and share that with the group. So if you can, on your tab, you'll see where it says questions. And in the questions, write us, send it to us, and I'll call it out. What other departments in your firm is the most innovative? Is it your corporate group? Is it your litigation? I don't know. Where is this innovation coming from? If it's not your IT, not your marketing, not your finance, let us know.
It's that Cincinnati office we just acquired. They're pushing us. So where is it coming from? Clients assert, I think, some pressure on firms to innovate. Debbie, where are you seeing innovation coming from within firms you work with most closely?
I think it comes from a lot of places. I think that oftentimes we see if a lateral comes in and a lateral had different systems or different ways of doing things, they can bring some innovative ideas to the table. I want to circle back to something that you said earlier about the firms that are hiring COOs. We've worked with a bunch of firms recently in the last several years to bring on a COO, and that is a challenging transition in a law firm. But I think that innovation can come from that position if you're hiring right for that position. And that, the idea of a COO, I have regularly had people say things to me like, do you think that a lawyer should run a law firm? And I'm always like, that's not even the right question. I think you have to think about the qualities of the person that you need to run a law firm. If you find someone with those qualities and they also happen to be a lawyer, then great. Yep. But there's not a requirement. In fact, there's a lot of cases where it makes absolutely no sense for a lawyer to be running a law firm. And if a law firm can get to that state of comfort with gifting the control that they have but don't use to someone who can actually be impactful in their organization, and they can bring someone on in that COO spot and challenge them with being innovative, there are so many resources available to that person. And that person, like Stephanie's idea about you have to have time to think about it, it would actually be that person's job to think about it. And then you send them to ILTA and you send them to New York Legal Tech and you have them join the ALA and you take advantage of these other associations that can really help someone coming into a firm that maybe is a little bit behind, because there's a lot of those, and think about what are the incremental steps to introduce innovation where it's not requiring a very busy managing partner or someone who's very busy on the executive committee to really drive these projects forward.
You know, we have a member of our community who comes to Uri's meetings, just hired a CEO, non-lawyer, who's going to take the reins, and we'll see if the lawyers are willing to follow the lead of the non-lawyer CEO. I got a client now I'm working with. There's big debate. Their administrator of a dozen years is retiring, and it had been a kind of a caretaker role. And big debate within the firm. Do we hire someone, you know, who's going to push us, who's going to have a seat at the table, influence decisions, or do we want to hire another caretaker? And, you know, there's just some lawyers in the firm who can't wrap their heads around the notion that a COO is going to improve our profitability. They see it as another expense. It's coming out of my pocket. It's really interesting, the debate, and I'm trying to bring them on the examples, ALA you mentioned. And I think get out of law. You know, look at what banking and consulting and other industries are doing. You know, get out of law. It's okay. It's okay. So, Uri, you getting any feed on the other sources of innovation firms on today's call?
Yeah, I got the two sources, HR. So I got an HR and benefits. I think it's related to the recruiting you were mentioning earlier, John. It's probably also the ideas around remote work. That's my guess if I'm reading past that answer. And then somebody said it's the firm administrator. That's who's giving the idea, and that's
the firm administrator gave that answer.
Yeah, perhaps.
No, but Debbie, you made the point. Yep. You know, they do bring ideas and new ways of doing things, and can push the firm to evolve and adapt to the changing market. Here are a couple of slides.
Before we get to this last slide, I think there's one important point to make about that. There are a lot of firm administrators, executive directors, office managers, COOs, pick a title, any title, that have their hands tied behind their back.
Yep.
On innovation, because they're not allowed to do their job. And, you know, there's that saying about, you know, leaders who don't listen will soon be surrounded by people who have nothing to say. And, you know, it's not uncommon for us to go to a firm and talk about, you know, why they're stagnant in whatever area, and have people say to us, it doesn't matter what good ideas we have, we're not allowed to implement them for pick a reason, any reason. They want to implement things, but there's one or two or three just bad actors that are allowed to completely challenge every process, every decision, and they're big rainmakers, or they're very influential or whatever. And, you know, it's just a gigantic waste of money if we hire really smart and talented people, and then we don't ask the people who have the ability to blow it up to stop blowing it up.
Well, and this decision making by unanimous agreement among the partners. You know, I think if we've got a supermajority wanting to roll on an initiative, we roll. We don't let one or two, you know, skeptical naysayers hold back the rest of the firm, because we need to be unanimous in our decision making. And you read through some of these partnership agreements that require unanimity. to do much of anything, and it's no wonder we become stagnant. We're almost we got about 10 more minutes here. I guess we're talking about continuous innovation and building it into your culture. No time for rest. Is that what kind of this slide suggests to us?
Yeah, I mean, it's one of you said earlier, like 1% better every day, every week. Innovation should be incremental. Change management, we'll talk about that for a minute. Change management is a big part of this, but the more incremental you can be about innovation and the more you can follow I think this slide is pretty obvious. We're just continually improving. But if you go to the next slide, there's a book, if you Google Kotter's 8-step method, you could find, a plethora of videos and articles to read about it. But it's simple.
Yeah.
What is the sense of urgency? Why do we need to do it? How do we build a team of people that are going to be part of the change? How do we form that strategic vision and think about what we're going to do? How do we get our volunteers? How do we enable action by like the pre-mortem? What could go wrong? Think about that early. Find something that is a short-term win that you can celebrate, and then keep that going and make the change. It can't be that we decide what we're going to change, and then 1 month later we walk past someone's desk and say, wait, you're printing the labels for the envelopes again? What happened? And they say, oh, it was taking too long to fold the bottom of the check, or whatever. Like we have this like this pull and this draw back to doing things the way we've done them. And so following this 8-step model of really making sure that you are helping your team take those continual forward steps. It's not just saying like we're going to agree to continuously improve. It's like we're locking arms and we're going to do it together, and nobody gets left behind, because when people if they get left behind, it's for a reason, and they're no longer in our locked arm line, right?
Yep. That first one, the sense of urgency, and we gave examples of firms that we're just not feeling it. We'll bump our rates, life goes on. We're doing, good to great, good enough, but creating that sense of urgency. We ask managing partners, what do you believe to be most important contributions in the leadership role? And, affecting long-term strategy, change agent. And so you're a catalyst as a managing partner to bring new ideas, fresh ideas, and bring your ammunition with you. And I've had a lot of them say, hey, John, you give me the ammunition I need to convince my partners that we need to go do some client satisfaction surveys, or we need to invest more money in business development, whatever it is. That data, we try to bring it in the community where people can really share, learn with each other, and equip you with the tools, the confidence to lead and affect change within your law firms. I love John Kotter's book, Leading Change. Great read. I think it should be on any managing partner's bookshelf. Here's another polling question, and let me pull it up and put this question out to our crowd now that we've inspired you to go out and get some innovation going. You're going to do something within the next quarter? And as people are weighing in with their answers, Debbie, how do people, what advice would you give people who want to innovate, want to change, just generally speaking?
I think that if you have willing participants with you, make a plan and work your plan. And if you don't, find something small that you can do that doesn't require, like, we can all be more innovative just in how we get our work done, our individual work done. And so, if you can't get the group of people to agree and lock the arms, then you start telling your story about change. And I hope that this poll result comes back that people are very or somewhat confident in executing on an innovative idea, because they're they're everywhere we look. The firm that I was talking about is like, it's just like a 60 lawyer firm. This is not a little tiny firm. These opportunities for innovation are everywhere for all of us.
You know, Larry Richard talks about, I love his stuff as well, the lawyer personality, and he talks about pick one thing, not 20 things. Focus on priorities, write it down, share it with your friends and colleagues. I'm gonna stop smoking. I'm gonna lose weight. Whatever it is, you put it in writing and share it with others, and you kind of hold yourself accountable, and maybe you start, you know, making some changes for the good. Stephanie, I invite your comments on how confident you think our audience is going to be to take on some innovation in the next 3 months.
Oh, I think they're going to be very confident. And I guess the one big takeaway I'm kind of having as this discussion keeps going is to ask everyone who's at your table, who's in the room with you, because if you're just talking to people who are like you, you're really missing out on some opportunities. The podcast I host, we had a Catherine Jeffries on last week on generational differences, and multi-generational businesses are over 70% more likely to hit their goals. So are you bringing in the next generation? Are you bringing in people who don't look like you, who don't have the same experiences as you? Because they are going to be the source of a lot of these ideas and those friction points that Debbie talked about. So get out and go start talking to other people.
Great guidance. Uri, you think people are confident and ready to go?
I think this is a somewhat self-selective group. I'm going to go with somewhat confident.
Well, we got a pretty excited group here. They're going to go charge out and make some things happen. That's great. A couple of you, come on, get it going and gain that confidence and go tackle a challenge here. And as Debbie and Stephanie, we've all been saying, it doesn't have to be to conquer the world. You know, pick little things, implement over time, and good things happen as a result. So thank you, Debbie. Thank you, Stephanie. Anything y'all want to leave us with before we go through our housekeeping announcements?
Stephanie, you probably have some great parting words of wisdom.
I know. I felt like that last one was so good.
It was so good.
You know, we call our program Lawyerist Lab, and I tell everyone it's not a lecture hall. It's not where you go and sit and listen. A lab is where you go and experiment. And so if you haven't heard the message, like, it can be the smallest thing, but you have to start pulling levers. And scientists do this great thing where they start with, you know, the hypothesis, and they run the experiment, and it either proves the thing or doesn't. There's no success failure. And I think lawyers, we're used to getting A's and being the best. And so we tend to judge ourselves very harshly. And if something doesn't go the way we think, we failed, and we go on. And maybe sit with it a little differently and say, okay, that didn't go the way I thought. Now let me tweak it. What do I do next? And what do I do next? And what do I do next? And if you keep doing those tweaks every week, and also we started in our coaching program, what will you do tomorrow? So it's not that you're going to be innovative for the next year. What are you going to do tomorrow? Are you going to have a conversation with someone on the team tomorrow and ask them about a friction point, or ask them for an idea of where we can make work better? Just committing to doing something tomorrow, and then see what goes, and then you go from there. You're much more likely to get started and to find success.
Yeah, inertia, you know, just getting it started, you know, I think gets in the way of a lot of progress. Uri, I invite your comments, then we'll wrap things up with our announcements.
Yeah, I have one tip how to make it happen. So we've been talking today. One of the themes has clearly been, you have to focus on this. You want to focus on this. So go focus on this. So my tip for today on this topic as we close is, we're getting towards the end of the year, and for all of your firms, that means comp time. And my big idea is to convey to your leadership how important coming up with ideas is, making our business better. Now you're all thinking we've talked about that forever. So here's how it actually happens. A lot of small firms don't track management time in their time system, and they don't reward it. Some do. So I think that's one change you can make towards the end of this year is by tracking management time. Obviously, people can abuse it, but that's not the problem in most firms. Management people do not spend nearly enough time on the business, coming up with ideas, improving the firm. So that's my parting thought.
I think, lawyers so often love their autonomy and don't like accountability and structure. And the firm may enact some new policies, and yet you get a few partners that aren't compliant and they can get away with that. And, I was at a speech not long ago, and the speaker was talking about, are we running a country or a country club? Because if we're running a firm, a country, there's leadership, there's fellowship. And so, if we're going to, impose some changes, think about the culture and what we're all about, why we're together. Feedback from today. Thank you, Debbie. Thank you, Stephanie. I thought this was a great conversation. I wasn't sure where we were going to go, but I thought it was really good and thought-provoking. I hope our audience did as well. So thank you to Debbie and Stephanie for being with us this month. We want your feedback. Please tell us what you thought, and we're going to send you a recording and handouts. And our friends at Nine Sail are going to do that recap for us. We'll be back October 18th for our next and 40th program. So hopefully we'll see many of you then. And don't forget about Chicago. If anyone wants to come join us, Debbie, it's going to be a great show. And reach out to us, today, tomorrow, and we'll see if we can't get you lined up. So with that, we are right at the top of the hour. And thank you, everybody, and have a good rest of the week.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks, John and
Take
Uri.
care. Thanks, Uri.
Bye now.
Thanks, Stephanie. Thanks, Debbie.